Welcome to the Marketing Mixtape podcast, hosted by me, Brittany Winfield of the Winfield Creative. If you have a burning marketing question, submit it at speakpipe.com/marketingmixtape, and we'd love to get it answered on a future episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe, baby! And if you're really feeling like it, leave us a review, so that way we can find more listeners just like you. But for now, sit tight, because now it's time for the Marketing Mixtape podcast. Let's go!
Hey, Abbey.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. I'm in a little hula pod over here. Let me get comfy.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you since I've been on your radio show and podcast.
Oh, yeah. I was looking through your podcast as well for this. And yeah, thank you for publishing what we did as well. It was a great conversation with you. So I was like, got to return the favor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm so excited for this episode. We're going to be talking about Gen Z versus millennial marketing. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to give you a chance to really introduce yourself. And as Abby's introducing herself, if anybody has any questions that you want us to answer on this live, make sure you drop it in the comments below. But Abbey, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Abbey Berger-Noor, and I guess like my day job, so I'm a PR professional, and I also help with social media, which I feel like is public relations, marketing, and like a million different jobs combined. And then in my free time, I'm also a radio host. I have my own podcast, Abstract, which Brittany was on that she mentioned, which is awesome. And then I am also a singer-songwriter in my free time. So I really love music and all things art and creative. So yeah, that's me.
Oh my gosh, you're just so talented. And I feel like having those extra hobbies really help folks like us like incorporate that into our creativity. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, since we're talking mostly about social media, it's really interesting to also like try to cultivate like a social media presence in different areas, because you have to like be very aware of, you're kind of your own different personas. Obviously, I'm the same person, but, they're for different reasons.
Exactly. And I feel like that's sometimes the hardest piece about social media marketing is you have your own persona, you know who you are as a person, and being able to incorporate it into other people's brands is oftentimes like the biggest struggle. How have you been able to navigate some of that, taking on other people's personas as you are developing marketing plans?
Yeah, that's a good question. So most of the social media that I do at the moment is either for myself, which definitely is like easier because it's for me, or some of the different accounts that I am a part of running and creating content for are the firm that I work for, our Instagram Cultivate PR Co. I help to make content for that, so I definitely have a different lens when making content. For that, it's definitely more professional. We still have fun, obviously, on our feed, but the content is very different. It's very like client focused. We're always trying to uplift our clients. And then I also help to make content every now and again for Big Heavy World social media. So that's the music organization where I have my radio show and podcast out of. So I help them out with some social as well. And that's very different too, because that's targeted toward uplifting other artists. So you do kind of have to switch your brain up. And I would say, you just have to kind of put on a different thinking cap with each account you switch to and from.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Having your own brands that you have a vision for, and then being able to adapt your tone of voice, adapt to the branding of other people. It could be, you have to have a lot of adaptability, I feel like, as a quality in social media marketing when it comes to doing it on behalf of other people and what they want their brand to become and represent.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really interesting, kind of the topic of this conversation that you chose to with Gen Z versus millennial social media and marketing. Because I know for me, I've been really interested in following some of like the trends within Gen Z, which was one of your questions that you shared with me,
Yes.
about kind of like how chaotic things are. And
Yes.
I find it interesting though that a lot of brands are adopting that same type
Yeah.
of strategy. Whereas I feel like before, like while it's still differentiated based on their brand,
Yeah.
a lot of the tactics are kind of the same. And I think that that's maybe a shift in how people are going about things. Like, I feel like this is kind of like a new thing that everyone's like really incorporating humor and like Gen Z humor specifically into what they're doing.
Do you feel like that professionalism has kind of become lost in translation now that we are more adopting, unhinged marketing, as a lot of folks are calling it? Do you feel like the professionalism has lessened since we've seen this trend popping up?
Yeah, I think that's like such an interesting question. 'Cause it's like, I would say my gut reaction is like yes, in a way. I think like I wouldn't incorporate some of those strategies in some of the accounts that like I run just because I don't think it would be a fit. But I do think that it's also like what defines success, like who are we to judge? And um a lot of them are successful in terms of the amount of views and engagement that they get. Um I just think it's like a whole shift. And I think that that's kind of a bigger part of the conversation that I feel like Gen Z is just doing kind of more cutting edge, rebellious type of strategies. And I think some generations that, I mean, millennials aren't too far off, but I think definitely generations that are older than, me and you, Gen Z and millennials, will kind of have to like view it from a different lens. Like I still think Gen Z and millennials are like very professional people. There's still a lot of strategy that goes into even the chaotic content.
Absolutely.
Um, but I do think that there's a time and a place for it. Like I definitely wouldn't advise like doing that for just like any account.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. We've seen, especially like if anybody follows Nutter Butter on TikTok, it's just been
It's
wild.
crazy.
But it has people talking. It
Mm.
has people, it's raising eyebrows. And in this world, the social media world where our news feeds are very bombarded, it's very saturated. I think it's very interesting to see this shift also of what are people doing to catch attention. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like the new form of hooks, where like the hooks we were looking at earlier, everybody started using them. And it's like, okay, how do you take it even further, because you realistically only have like 1 to 3 seconds to catch somebody's attention. So yeah, it's really interesting to see which brands start to adopt this, and even on like smaller accounts. So I follow a bunch of public libraries have been popping up on my feed
Mm.
of these edits of having these like older librarians adopt Gen Z culture. Yeah. Have you been seeing that trend pop up in the things that you're looking at online?
I haven't seen anything like library specific, but I do see some trends that kind of make fun of like older generations. Like
Yeah.
the example that I always see is like the millennial pause
Yeah.
trend, where
Oh, yep.
like it's like people who film, which I feel like isn't even true of some millennials, um but yeah, no, I think it's funny that I think that's a good way for people to kind of engage older generations though, is to just kind of make it lighthearted and fun and bring them into the trends in a way that's like not overwhelming to them. Like if you can have a laugh, I feel like people enjoy that type of content.
Yeah. And I also feel like, a lot of people don't want to see salesy posts anymore. So it's a good way for businesses to showcase their culture using humor without it being like, oh, we are selling this product, we're selling a sale. It's incorporating those elements into the content, but without, really just being super salesy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a shift. Um, and the other thing that I think kind of comes along with that is sometimes like, I mean, cancel culture these days is also like insane. And some of those like hooks that you're saying that I think sometimes people like latch onto are a lot of times kind of like they can be a little
Oh,
toxic.
yeah.
Like they can be, some of them are like fake newsy, some are like, um, I don't know, like saying stuff that's maybe not true or
Yeah.
exaggerated. And that's kind of also like a line I think too you have to be aware of.
Absolutely. You know, I was starting to put out, I put out a reel yesterday that I was all about like red flags. And one of the things that I said in there was like guarantees as hooks, especially like I guarantee like this will make you X amount of dollars or grow, like you're guaranteed to go viral. Like those are the types of hooks that it has so many factors behind it, including, especially with like in the coaching world, you know, promises to make certain results for other people, but reality, like you have to put in the work yourself
Mm-hmm.
using that program. So yeah, seeing, especially in the coaching world, like some of these social media strategies right now, we're seeing this move away from those more like quantifiable hooks and
Mm-hmm.
then shifting into more of like this unhinged marketing, shifting more into, okay, you know, what are some even movements that I can do with the camera that will catch attention and keep people's attention? So it might not be the words coming out of your mouth, but it could even be like the body movements that are expected, including the millennial pause. And,
Yeah.
you know, what is intentional strategy versus unintentional, you know, mistakes and strategy? Sometimes a mistake is the best strategy to get people to comment on your social media posts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just feel like being authentic is the best way to go. Like,
Yeah.
um, if you're trying to make content, being authentic to whoever the brand is you're representing, or if it's your own social media content, like those are always the people that I enjoy seeing the most. So I do think sometimes trends go a little too far for my liking personally, because I'm just like, I don't know, you shouldn't have to be doing all that to get attention. But at the same time, you know, it works sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So as, you know, somebody who I'm assuming you grew up with social media, is that true? Like, you know, I'm a few years older than you, so I grew up, you know, my teenage years is when Instagram came out, like Facebook didn't come out until I was in middle school. So I imagine you had it earlier in your, you know, childhood. How was that like, being able to use it in a personal way now that you are using it in a professional way?
Yeah, so I definitely was exposed to it a little bit earlier. I feel like I wasn't really like active on social media probably until I was like in middle school. And I remember like classmates having like Instagram and all of that, even in like elementary
Oh
school,
my
which
God.
like and like today I feel like that's so common. Like kids are just like it's like the iPad generation now, which I definitely like don't relate to because I think I was kind of raised a little bit more of like a 90s kid, even though I was born in '02, just because I like lived rurally. So I was like out playing outside. But I mean, I was exposed to social media. And I think the biggest thing that I probably encountered as a kid that I think a lot of young people are dealing with now that never had to deal with before is the fact of the strain on your mental health and comparing. Like, it is crazy to think how much I used to compare myself to other people on social media, like my classmates. Everyone cared about how many like likes you would get, like the
Your
popular cool people.
followers.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
always had all of that going, and it that is just like something that I think is such a big part of the culture, of being a young person on social media now, that also I think older generations like don't quite understand, because I think their view on social media is different. Um, but yeah, navigating that I think was definitely difficult at a young age. Difficult probably in high school for you too, but I think it's probably like, you know, harder for even younger children to process as well. But yeah, I think that's something that you learn as you go. Like now I feel like I don't care about like any of that now. Like I just post what I want, and you reach a point I think where you mature and it doesn't matter to you, but um maybe not for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in some of the conversations I have with business owners, a lot of it is, you know, I didn't grow up with social media. I am already feeling burnt out and stressed about it. So do you have any recommendations for, you know, folks that didn't grow up with it? Now all of a sudden it's a huge piece of the conversation of how to be successful as a business. How do you prevent burnout as a social media manager who has been on platforms, you know, consistently trying to find trends and then doing it professionally? What kind of boundaries have you been able to set for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think it's hard. I think it's really hard these days to set boundaries because, like, I think everyone walks around, we have our phone on us all the time. Like, I don't like leave a room without my phone. It's like a toxic relationship. I can't get rid of my phone. Um, but I think it's kind of like a mindset set shift for me.
Mhm.
And then I would say in terms of like businesses, um, how to like not experience burnout. I think it really just comes down in like the planning. I know for me, I'm very type A. Like in terms of like the accounts that I manage, like I like to think about what's happening and like the news cycle, what's trendy, what's relevant to like, for example, like the company that I work for, like what media placements did we just gain for a client that we should post about and like promote that we gained for this client. Um, and you do have to kind of be on, like you have to be on it, you have to be checked in to what's going on, and what's relevant. But if you also kind of plan that out and like schedule posts, schedule emails, like just I have loved just like scheduling things to go out so I don't have to be like completely mentally present when like everything's being rolled out, and I think that that has really helped me. So I think yeah, if anyone isn't aware of like all of those tools, like that's a big piece of advice I would say.
Yeah, that's great advice because, we use it in our professional lives, we use it in our personal lives. So I don't know about you, but like for me, I have this kind of like two different platforms. One of them's the Winfield Creative, one of them's my own personal account, and they have very different for you pages based on the intention that I'm using social media for. So for the business, it's knowing trends, being on top of trending audio, following the creators of Instagram for all these updates that happen all the time. Then my For You page is kind of like where that chaos lies. It lies in like the hobbies that I have and more of, entertainment purposes. So following comedians and stuff that'll, is more of like a stress reliever where I can kind of like put work over here, put personal over here. Is that a strategy that you've used? And if so, I'd love to know what's on your For You page.
Yeah, well, my personal For You page is like a fever dream, which I love because I'm always laughing at my feed. Like I wouldn't want to have it any other way. um, so most of the accounts that I manage or am a part of managing, we don't have a TikTok for, but in terms of like our feed just in general, yeah, it's very different. And I am very conscious like when I'm logged into those accounts, like I'm not like searching for things that Abby's interested in. Like I'm very much thinking like with that brain for that account. So yeah, the feeds definitely look different. But I think it's important to also like still find the joy in social media and like have your own account that you can do your own like scrolling and giggling to content. Yeah, I think the separation is important, and I definitely try to do that. Um, but it can be hard, especially when you're like logged in, like you have one phone and you're logged into like five accounts. So I'm sure you can relate with like all of your clients too. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, I try to keep it separate as much as I can.
same here. I'm like, it's kind of like your bank account, Like, I'm thinking about getting an extra phone just for client feeds, and I like keep mine separate because they are very different. I feel like, those trending audios and stuff over here, we're like, over here's the Netter Butter account, here's Mudang the hippo, here's all these like trending things happening right now. That if my clients were like, what? If they were to see it, they'd be like, what are you watching?
Yeah, what are you searching for on my account?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like if your For You page really like says a lot about a person. So I would just love to, see what other people have going on in their For You page. And I think that that's why, platforms like Instagram, especially, they are encouraging more people to share posts like in the private DMs and starting to curate each other's For You pages. And there is more emphasis on specifically that call to action right now, to create more community online.
Yeah, it's crazy how like relevant your For You page gets. Like my For You page knows how I'm feeling before I do, and I'm like scrolling through and like, how did you know that I was thinking about that today?
Yeah.
Um, which is also wild. You know, AI is also a huge part of the conversation. Like, it's getting very accurate, for better or worse. I think it's helpful in a lot of ways. It obviously helps us to see content we're interested in, which is good. But yeah, a little scarily accurate sometimes.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, there are a few like interns I work with right now who are actively in college, and what I've been hearing from them is AI is not something that is encouraged in marketing classes in school. So my other question for you is, do you use AI in your job? And if so, what was that learning process like coming from, you know, a higher education program that probably didn't introduce it to you? What was that learning journey like, and how do you use it now in your job?
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. Like, I feel like in the past like 2 years, I finally was like, all right, like I kind of understand how I can use this in a way that makes sense for me and also doesn't make me feel like I'm like using it for like a, not that I ever would use it for a bad reason, but I feel like a lot of people consider like using AI as plagiarism, which I think in a lot of ways when you're writing content and stuff, it's a very fine line. And I wanted to make sure, especially since I'm a PR professional, that if I'm like, you know, making content, like ethics and PR is so important. Oh, yeah. And I take that very seriously. So the way that I tend to use AI these days is mostly like I was kind of saying with some of like the like platforms, like automated like sort of messages, or every now and again I will use ChatGPT just to like brainstorm. Like, one thing I know in PR, like we do all the time, is we're always sending out pitches, and I usually do all of my original writing for the actual copy, but when it comes to subject lines and trying to like optimize like the best kind of like subject line that will hook someone into your pitch, I'll sometimes use it for that. And then one thing that we use at my company, which my boss uses in meetings, which is so helpful, is we use this platform called, excuse me, it's called Meet Geek. And it just records all of the audio, and then it will give you a transcript of everything that you talked about in your like call, which is so helpful because, you know, we take notes when we're like in the calls as well, but it doesn't miss a beat, and it's usually pretty accurate, and it just saves time. So if you have to like remember what you were talking about and couldn't remember, that's super helpful.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I also want to do a quick plug because Alex, your boss, will be on this Instagram Live podcast recording a few weeks from now.
Oh,
so
yay!
Everybody looks out for that. So that'll be exciting.
Oh, I'll have
yeah.
to tune in. I'll tune in and chat.
Yeah, and we'll be talking a little bit more about like crisis PR, especially with social media. So I'm excited to pick Alex's brain about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That will be a great conversation. She's the best.
Totally. So where do you see social media moving forward from here? What do you see as like, you know, the trends of 2025 that we might be seeing pop up?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think AI will continue to be a big part of that. I think things will continue to be like, especially with marketing, products will continue to be like ingrained in content. I think now one trend that I've seen is you can't distinguish between a sponsored post a lot of the time versus like an unsponsored post or like product placement in posts. I think that a lot of that is going to continue to just like the lines are going to continue to be blurry. I think we're going to continue to see that. And people like making content in creative ways though that also like incorporate products if they have like brand deals.
Yeah.
What other trends? I think like the
subtle marketing is
subtle
what you're
marketing.
getting at.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. Yeah, the subtle marketing trend for sure. And I think the humor, like the Gen Z humor, I think that that's going to continue. I think Gen Z can be very serious about certain things. Like I think we care a lot about like corporate social responsibility, and I think we're like very outspoken in a lot of ways about important issues in the world. But we also have that like lighthearted humor, and I think that's been really interesting to see both of those trends be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think both will continue. I think a lot of people are a lot more They care a lot more about kind of what they're doing, what they're buying, what they're saying online. But they also are having, I think, a lot more fun
Yeah.
with the content they're
Yeah.
making.
I mean, it's important to also have relatability.
Hmm.
So that, this is exactly why we're seeing this movement away from like super salesy posts, is because if people don't have an emotional investment in you, the business, your product, your service, they're not going to magically take out their wallet and buy something. So it's almost like a waste of a post if you're just doing something salesy, if you don't have that, that audience that is invested in your brand yet. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I feel like with the subtle marketing, product placement, but I feel like it will get a little bit harsher on the
Hmm.
technicality and the legality of tagging social posts or sponsored posts, I mean.
Yeah.
So we've seen this especially on TikTok in the last year, where makeup artists and people that are more in the health and wellness sphere are talking about supplements and stuff like that. There's a lot of crackdowns related to sponsored posts. So I'd be curious to see if that's going to spike up a little bit more. And also, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when I start to do like collaborative posts, so especially with giveaways, it always asks me if this is a branded post. So I'm curious to see if like giveaways will have a few more
Mm.
regulations put on them. Yeah, and to see this unhinged, chaotic marketing while also subtle marketing, but in a way, I do feel like unhinged marketing is subtle marketing.
Yeah, it's like weird. They're very
Yeah.
different, but very much the same trend all in one.
Yeah.
But I think you're totally right. I think that the legal side of things is going to have to really amp up, and with AI as well, and like intellectual property, creative
Yeah.
property of like people that are like designing certain like design assets or something in posts, like they're gonna have to like really draw those lines and soon. Um,
Yeah.
so we'll see. It will be interesting. Like this is a conversation we'll have to revisit in like a year from now, and we'll be like,
Yeah.
what were we talking about back in
Absolutely.
2024?
Yeah. And I feel like Meta's already rolling this out, but you're gonna have to start tagging what is AI generated rather than is original content. So I'm really curious to see if this is going to either awaken this idea that, a lot of marketers are using AI, or will it force more people to do original content?
Mm,
So I'm kind of curious to see this where this divide might start to happen in our world.
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think I like use like Canva, like it's my freaking like best, like
Yeah.
I use that all the time. It's the best platform. And I think it's also interesting because like a lot of the platforms that I think people are making content from like are like templates that are pre-made by other people, and they're put on platforms like that are free to use, so it's not considered like true like stealing of someone's like
Yeah.
property. um but I think that's also kind of interesting that that's how we go about things now too, because you know, when do you kind of draw the line as to like what's original and what's not? I think that's also hard. I could see people like saying that, I made this post from a template and it's like my original design, but it's like, but you also made it from a template that you
Yeah.
didn't make.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, things change also between starting with a template, and it could look totally different by the end of the revisions. So I'm curious to see where that will also land, of
Mhm.
like what is templated, what will people have to start to mark with AI. And yeah, I feel like it'll come to a head, and I'm curious to see how it'll also change search engine optimization, both, in Instagram, but also with folks who have blogs, with taking information from one marketing channel, and converting it to another, because that's often what AI is used for also, is, take this blog post and turn it into all these Instagram captions. So like, where is that,
Mhm.
where is that line going to be?
Yeah, it's like the biggest question that I think everyone's asking themselves in like every industry right now. So we'll just have to see. It's like a ticking time bomb, but hopefully it will be for the better. Like I'm hopeful that it will be like a very useful tool and we'll figure out all the nitpicky stuff.
Yeah. And if anything, that's going to make more human to human marketing come back around. So,
yeah, I mean, that will probably be the trend when we're all like robots in a robot world.
Exactly. Well, this has been a great episode, Abby. I want to give you an opportunity to plug anything that you may have going on if you want to give a shout out to your services.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you're looking for any PR services, I work for Cultivate, and we're a communications and public relations firm. And if you're looking for our social media, it's Cultivate PR Co. And then personally, I run my own podcast, which is Abstract, and the handle for that is AB dot, like a period, Stract podcast. And then what else? Last but not least, my music is Abbey BK _ music, and Abbey is ABBEY.
Oh,
Yeah. Got to be different.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. And we will definitely put all of these links in the description. But thank you so much, Abby. We were talking about Gen Z versus millennial marketing, getting some insights as to how you see the world in social media as somebody who's a few years younger than, most of us who've been doing it for a hot minute.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting with you as always.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Marketing Mixtape podcast brought to you by the Winfield Creative. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you could like and subscribe and leave a review and do all the things so that way we can find more people just like you. And if you still have burning marketing questions that you want answered, be sure to submit them now at speakpipe.com/marketingmixtape. Until next time, this is Brittany Winfield with the Winfield Creative, signing off.